I'm Travis Baker. We've got my team here, and Lauren, Dave, and
Wade.
Wade. Thank you. Lauren, Dave, and Wade. And they're going to present first since we're missing our fourth team member. So we're going to go ahead and turn the time over to them to present.
Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. This is Wade Mitchell, and don't see myself showing up here on the camera, but what we're going to do is a proposal to offer an alternative to the web design and development internship. And like was stated earlier, I'll be presenting with Lauren Lockridge and Dave Nielsen. So to start off, we strongly believe in this. I know I'm an online student. This is something that would help me a lot. And I know as far as our audience, this will be relevant to a lot of you who are also online students. Even if you're not web design and development majors, maybe you have a current alternative to a traditional internship in your current major. And if you are a web design and development online student, well, this will be for you. We've put a lot of thought and research into this, so we hope you enjoy our presentation. Lauren even went and was able to meet with the faculty. So if you'll follow along with our slides here, I'll be on slide 3 is where I'm starting. So BYU Idaho's web design and development online degree is offered to many students who are not able to complete traditional internships. This proposal will provide 2 alternative options to the internship requirement. The project option will require completion of a professional website, providing experience to prepare students for their career. We also have a waiver option that will allow students to bypass the traditional internship requirements by meeting specific circumstances. Next slide will be slide 4. So for the project option, how this will work is the faculty advisor will assign participants to a team that will work together to complete at least one detailed and highly functional website. As a supervisor and mentor, the faculty advisor will fill the role of the employer with the team members who function as if they were employees. The employee pool will be drawn from eligible student participants. We'll have eligible students that will be required to submit a resume and participate in the interview process, just like it was a regular job. Also, each participant will have a specific role to play based on their major emphasis. So these roles can include like designer, front-end developer, back-end developer. The participants will need to, and they'll be expected to coordinate their efforts and support each other to achieve the goals as a team. They'll also be expected to act as if they were employees for a genuine business. So their responsibilities will include completion of assigned portions of work prior to the deadline established by the faculty supervisor. Each student will be expected to spend a minimum of 100 hours working on the project. Next slide is slide 5. A faculty member will be required to evaluate all applications for waiver. So this is for the waiver option. Students who wish to attempt this option will be required to submit a proposal for a waiver, and the proposal must meet all established criteria and persuade the faculty supervisor that the applicant has the necessary skills and experience to succeed in the workplace. Acceptable evidence will include, but will not be limited to, proof that the applicant has created functioning websites for hire or is currently employed in the technology field. Slide 6. Why do we currently need this alternative to the internship? Well, there are 2 reasons, and they both correlate with each other. The first is that BYU Idaho currently has a lower than average graduation rate. In fact, BYU Idaho's current graduation rate is 6.6% below the national average. This is a problem. The second reason why we need an alternative to this is that there's been a rapid increase in online students. This increase is likely to result in further reduction of the graduation rate if an alternative to the internship is not established. On to slide 7 here, we'll go over some of the online growth of our university. On-campus enrollment has increased 3.9% in the 1-year period between fall of 2013 and fall of 2014. Online enrollment has increased 57.4% in that same time. So the problem that this creates for many of the online students at BYU Idaho is the completion of a traditional internship is just not feasible. Many of us online students have chosen to enroll in the online classes because we already have full-time jobs, we run businesses, we're homemakers, or we're engaged in other activities that prevent us from attending campus classes. Most of the online students cannot reasonably complete a traditional internship. Online students, we also do not have the advantages of campus students who are able to go to the BYU Idaho career fairs as well as participate in organized trips to other career fair and businesses. These campus advantages increase the internship opportunities for campus students, while there's nothing like this that is facilitated for the online student. The alternative project option that we're proposing will help online students gain experience and provide an alternative to an internship that will allow greater flexibility with scheduling, but still provide valuable experience. There are also online students who've already gained the needed skills and experience in the workplace, or they're currently employed in their field of study. For students in this group, the internship would be counterproductive. So these students would be given the opportunity to receive the waiver. I'll now turn over the time to Dave. Thank you.
I noticed your video isn't working. Is mine showing up?
I can see you, Dave, yes.
Okay, good. So continuing on slide 8, our objective of this program is to, as Wade described, create a project-based internship alternative. And we'd have a pilot program ready for that, available by spring 2015. And to go a little more and expound upon what Wade described, the first option would be to have a project-based course to help students gain a working professional environment, working experience. We would develop criteria for 5 or more projects, depending on the load of each project, create waypoints, a rubric, and a timeline for each project so that the students could stay on schedule and accomplish those projects to the best of their ability, and use common industry roles in a team setup that they would also find in a real workplace. So in many workplaces you'll see kind of a division of labor between front-end designers or back-end designers or people in marketing, depending on which the company or the culture that you're involved in. And so creating those roles for the student would help simulate that work environment. The second option is the internship waiver, and the goal would be to make this available as soon as winter 2015. To determine the eligibility for this waiver, the faculty would develop some preset criteria, and if the student is able to meet those criteria, then they would be able to waive the internship. Wade mentioned some of these factors, such as people who are involved in full-time employment already, who are taking the online just to finish their degree. I myself am in that situation where I have and am currently working in a professional environment, and the internship would only be a redundant course load for me. And so being able to waive that requirement through previous work experience would be, I think, very beneficial for a lot of students. So the plan to carry this out, slide 11, we would adapt the business projects internship model. We would could take the model that they have and find adaptations that will work for this CIT department, the Web Design and Development degrees. Philip Wheatley, Evan Caldwell, Shane Thompson, and CIT department heads would coordinate to develop this program. They would create job descriptions. So, as I mentioned earlier about simulating a real work environment with setting up team environments and things like that, or career roles, we would create with those job descriptions. And then they would also develop all other deadlines, requirements to design briefs, and other curriculum that is necessary for these alternative internship courses. Slide 12, we've created a deployment schedule. It looks a little warped, but we would have a pilot program ready by spring 2015. And as you can see under this schedule, we have each of the intermediary goals set there for a date that we'd have those accomplished by, and a timetable for about how long that would take to develop, and that's represented by those colored bars. So at the bottom you can see the full program launch, that begin date of August 3rd, 2015, and the end date of August 7th, 2015. So by that time we would hope to have this program completed and ready to go. Slide 13 is our budget. The budget would be very small for this program, and that's why we believe this could be a very realistic thing to implement, because there would be hardly any costs involved except for small administrative costs, and those could be covered by course fees, and we wouldn't have to add any additional charges to the student tuition. Course development could be done by students who are involved in other project-based degrees or courses at BYU Idaho. Many other programs are done this way, where a student such as an English program or English degree would develop course content in iLearn or otherwise to save on costs. Volunteer mentors would provide feedback and assistance to these students to help emulate a real-world work environment. And so these volunteer mentors could act as kind of a boss or a mentor to give feedback, provide advice, or other things that they feel are necessary to help the students succeed. And as I said, that would be voluntary, and so that wouldn't cost any additional money for the program. So on to slide 14.
Great. I've got slide 14. My name is Lauren Lockridge. I will be presenting personnel and qualifications, which deals quite a bit with mentors, which we've talked a bit about just now. And then also we'll be going over facilities and equipment. So those are the two main points. Personnel and qualifications deals mainly with administration, instructors, mentors, and students of every nature that apply to this project. We'll move on to slide 15, which focuses on administration. So the current faculty internship coordinators will essentially be the same for administration. There wouldn't be any need to really switch these to anybody else. It's more efficient and streamlined just to keep them the same people, which is Shane Thompson. He'll continue in his role and wash over the project. He will also receive support, however, and that's where these other roles come in. So we'll point out that the simplicity of administration is kind of the key, and it will be handy to keep it that way. So let's move on to the next slide, which should be 16. We've got instructors. Now the instructors are going to be very, very similar to the mentors. However, they will go paid. And to start off, just because we're unaware of how things are going to move forward, I think that it's best that the instructor is one person to start with. Now, that doesn't mean it can't change, and that doesn't mean it shouldn't. In fact, if this takes off like we think it should, then it'll probably increase as it goes. But these instructors or instructor will be kind of organizers for the mentors. They will obviously be directly under the administrator and help issue what he sees is necessary. Then let's see. Oh, also the instructor is in charge of the faculty, the eligibility of faculty that's required. So let's move on to the next slide, which is 17. We've got the mentors, which, as has been touched on, volunteered. These will be experienced individuals They have to meet certain criteria as far as if they're qualified or not. The mentors are there mainly to teach and guide the students that are going to be getting into this program. So they'll have a very hands-on role with the students. That's important to remember, and that's why it's very important that these individuals are trained and know what they're doing, and and definitely have teaching experience. So it's very important and key. And they'll manage teams of at least 3. We'll move on to the next slide, which is slide 18. This is going into the students. So let's point out once again that there are students that will be qualified for the project and students that can possibly qualify for the waiver. Now, there are different things that are going to qualify them for either one of these positions. They must be full-time campus. So they must be full-time online students. Full-time campus students will not be able to take this intern as an option. They must take the original prescribed courses and methods. This is to not overburden the project as it is. Another thing. Let's see here. So we've got some. Let me explain to you a few examples or qualifications for what would qualify someone for the online. Typical valid causes can include owning a business or working full-time already. So these are very key. This is who it's geared towards. And because doing these things would essentially prevent them from being able to take an intern anyway. So that is the main point of this project. Let's move on to slide 19, and we'll discuss some of the reasons for students in the actually, slide 19 covers some of those same things, so let's skip over to 20, which is students that must qualify for the waiver. Some of the things that fit under that category are their senior level credits, so they must to qualify. They must have senior level credits, and they must be nearing the completion of their major coursework, and they must be able to prove the possession of skills and experience that are equal to or greater than those that would typically be gained from participating in an internship. So this to prove this, they have to have either have been paid to build at least 3 high-quality websites, or must be currently employed in a web industry position, and this would provide them an automatic waiver, because that's essentially proof enough. Let's move to the next slide, and these slides are all just covering basically what I've said. Slide 21 is what I just stated there. So let's move on to slide 22. Facilities and equipment. This is very simple. So existing facilities and participants. There's a note about participants in here. Let's move to slide 23. Existing facilities. There's no need for extra facilities or workspace or anything of that nature. There will be computers and technologies needed. For the most part, actually, let's skip over to slide 24 now. For the most part, participants are going to be responsible for their workspace and the necessary equipment. So it'll be really handy on both parts. Working with your own materials is always handy in its own way. So that's everything, and hopefully you've seen the importance of our project, and that's the end of our presentation. So, any questions?
That actually makes a lot of sense to me. I do have a question.
Okay.
Why did y'all choose this topic? What was your purpose? Or is this specifically applicable to one of you?
I think I think it was more applicable. The initial idea came from a class member that's not with us anymore.
Hmm.
And it was definitely applicable to him. It's applicable to you, right, Wade?
Yeah, it's applicable to me, but yeah, Eric started this. He had to drop out because he's a full-time business owner. You know, he's working about 60 hours a week, and he's going to have all his classes finished. And he's like, "There's no way I can do an internship." And you know, just to prove his point, he was so busy with work that he had to drop out of this class. But I mean, that just kind of illustrates a lot of the challenges that we face as online students.
Right.
Why he
That's fair.
Any other questions? Or? We're ready to be wowed by you guys then.
Great. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your presentation. And I guess once everyone gets everything set up, unmuted, on camera, off, then we'll kick this thing off. Let me send you all a link to our slides real quick.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Did y'all get that in the group chat?
I got it.
Okay. All right, so Matthew, whenever you're ready.
Alrighty. So my name is Matthew Hatch, and the members of our group is Travis Baker, Joel Lassen, and Michael Grillo. And our presentation is making the BYU Idaho website more mobile friendly. And if you just go to the next slide, this is our overview of what we're going to cover. We have our executive summary, introduction, followed by the problem statement, objectives, the plan, the budget, then we'll cover the qualifications needed for the project, the required facilities and equipment, and then wrap everything up with a conclusion. Next slide, please. So, our executive summary. It is quite evident that we live in a mobile world. More and more users of all age groups are using mobile devices to access the internet on a daily basis. If you look to the right, we actually have a chart that illustrates a Pew study that was conducted in 2014, showing you the percent of users from different age groups that have used a mobile device to access the internet. The one I'd like to pay careful attention to is the one that says 18 to 24, because that is the majority of your college students. And if you'll notice, well over 90% of that age group have used a mobile device to access the internet. And so because of this rapid increase of use of mobile devices to access the internet, we propose to revamp the MyBYUI website to be more mobile friendly. We will accomplish this by making mobile templates that will work with the existing framework on the MyBYUI site, and these templates will be able to be applied across all pages of the site. These templates will allow for a smooth transition from the old layout to the new mobile-friendly layout, and will also provide consistency and familiarity across the MyBYUI website. Next slide.
All right, so I'm Joel Lassen. I'm going to introduce us as a team. So who we are is we are computer science and web development students, all studying at BYU Idaho, and we're all in our junior year. Travis assisted in the recreation of the BYUI website / online domain and its subpages. Michael worked on developing an online alumni tracking and different links works for his local community college, and Matthew is an experienced BDN. Next slide. So our problem statement is that the MyBYUI website lacks mobile support, which creates compatibility issues for students and faculty using handheld devices. Most of the site doesn't fit comfortably on a small screen, as we can see on the picture of the iPhone right there. Has not been met by the number of university students using mobile devices are increasing. And Debbie Pearson found that 75% of high school students in America own a smartphone. We believe that a failure to accommodate these trends will result in a disruption to students who are exploring the possibility of attending BYU Idaho. Next slide.
So next slide, if you haven't already. I'm going to introduce the objectives to you and go over our plan to accomplish those objectives. And in our objectives, these are simply just some goals that we have that we hope to accomplish as a result of the success of this project. The two main goals that we want to accomplish from this project are, first of all, we want to accomplish more accessibility across mobile devices as in phones, also tablets, as well as better computer support and different browser support. Second, we want to increase the productivity of the tools that are on the MyBYUI website. Sometimes our students don't use them because they're difficult to use or they're clunky. So, next slide. In this slide, we'll talk about the accessibility issues that we're having at BYU Idaho on the MyBYUI website and what our goals are with this project. So when we talk about accessibility, what we would like to see is people being able to access the MyBYUI website and do it with a friendly interface on phones, tablets, and computers. We're specifically having issues right now with phones, and that's a huge target for us and a huge goal that we have as a result of this presentation. But we also want to make sure we don't forget any of the other devices that our students are using. One other thing with accessibility is we want to make sure that there's a uniform feel across the website so that way people feel like they're still in the same group of pages as they navigate through different things and tools in there. And what we would like to see as a result, as a success of this project, and what we plan to see is a 100% increase in the usage of these tools. Students sometimes just aren't using them, and quite frankly, the usage on mobile phones of the MyBYUI tools and the website in general is poor because it's not mobile friendly. And so by April 2015, we will see the number of students using those services and tools doubled. That's our goal, is to see that amount of students doubled, as you can see in that graph on the right-hand side there. Next slide. For productivity, we want to target the university tools. These are very clunky and complicated to use sometimes, and when we're referring to the university tools, we're referring to things like the grad planner, the registration system, the university calendar, and other things that can be found on the MyBYUI website. So our goal here is to get more students using these tools, and like I've said earlier, some just simply don't because they're either not mobile friendly, or in this case for productivity, they're just difficult to use. They're hard to use. And so we would like to see more students using them because they're easier to use. And in that graph on the right, the two bars on the left-hand side, the blue bar represents where we are now with the number of students, percentage of students using mobile devices to access the MyBYUI tools. The red bar right there is where we hope to be by April 2015. The other thing that we'd like to see is less time spent on these tools. Our students are very busy, and they have a lot going on in their lives. And so with these tools, we want to streamline them and make everything easier to access and get them the information they want right away instead of making them go through different avenues. Because right now our tools are kind of bulky and they're hard to navigate. We also want to make them more efficient by just taking things out that aren't necessary, as well as just making sure that the back end is set up well and so everything is speedy. And in the right-hand side, that chart, the two bars on the right, the blue bar represents how much time our students are spending on the MyBYUI tools right now. And that's a little higher because the tools are clunky and harder to use. We'd like to see them spending less time per student on those. And so that target in red is our goal by April 2015. Next slide. This here is an overview of our plan, what we're going to do to accomplish the objectives that have been placed forth. A huge part of what we're going to do in this plan is we're going to use an iterative process and something that's called an agile methodology. In this methodology, in this programming methodology, everything is done in iterations, also known as loops. And so what that allows us to do is it allows us to make quick corrections. So if something comes up, if there's an issue, we can catch it in an iteration and apply it in future iterations instead of doing everything at once and then getting feedback at the end. That creates complicated issues, as well as if there's feedback that's going to implement drastically the look and feel. We want that earlier rather than later. And our future development just becomes quicker and more streamlined because we're getting those changes right away. And it allows for constant feedback. We're able to push these pages out to the students right away for them to start using. And as they use them, we can get feedback from them on what they'd like to see as well. Next slide. This chart here is a Gantt chart, which shows us the timeline of our project and the different processes that we have in there. As you can see, our expected completion of this project is April of 2015. Plan to do this all within a span of about 3 to 4 months. And as you can see on the left-hand side, we have different processes that are shown there. And we'll go through those in more detail on the next few slides. Next slide. This is a chart of how the process is going to flow. And we'll get into more detail on this. What we just like to point out is that the first part over there on the left are those two that are lined up, one on top of another. That's going to be the first stage. Once that stage is complete, we'll move into the page creation stage, which, as you can see, is our iterative process, just looping around until we finish everything. Next slide. So for our template creation, which is the very first step that we have, we want to make sure that the website, and especially the MyBYUI pages that we're recreating, all have a universal feel. And we're going to communicate with university relations on that, on what color schemes to use, what graphics to use, and just make sure that the look and feel has the BYU Idaho brand on it. We want to make sure that there's uniformity between our pages as well as other areas on campus and on the website. And we also want uniformity between these pages, which means we don't want any drastic UI changes, user interface changes. And the way that we can accomplish this is by creating this template and making sure that there are similar elements on each page. That way the feel is the same and they feel like they're in the same area. A huge focus on this template is that we want it to be responsive, which means we want it to be available across phones, tablets, and computers, including laptops and desktops. And so as the device screen changes, then we want to be able to adapt to that. Now, the great thing about the framework that BYU Idaho already has is that it's set up for that. And it's accomplished using media queries, which means we have the same content and the same pages and the same elements within those pages. It's just we're able to adjust the layout based on how wide the screen is. That way we're not loading extra code to accomplish the different layouts. Next slide. So this is our iterative page creation method that we're going to use, and we're going to take this all one page at a time. So that process that you see over there on the right, that flow is going to be accomplished once per page. And once a page is completed, we'll move on to the next page and continue to knock things out that way. So the first part that we have is we need to design the page, and we're going to use the template that was created in the earlier step, and we're going to simply fill in that template with data and graphics and the tools that are relevant to the page that we're creating. And the reason we're using that template, again, is so that we can rewrite a minimal amount of code and to have that uniform look. Because things can change drastically as you allow a whole page to be completely redesigned between the same website. The next step is the development stage. And in the development stage, we're going to implement the design that was created just before using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. After our developers are done with that, we're going to pass that off onto the testers, and they're going to test each page. We're going to do that right after development so that we can find bugs quickly and resubmit it for development. As you see in that flow, if the page does not work, then it's going to go back to our developers, and they're going to continue with the development process. And our testers are going to test on a mobile phone, tablets, as well as desktops and laptops, and test on multiple browsers just to make sure that everything works the way it's supposed to. And the last stage there is approve. We're going to request approval at the end of each iteration just to make sure everything turned out as expected. And if everything did turn out well, and if that page gets approved, we're immediately going to make that page live. And so we're going to deploy that to our web server, and that way students can start using it right away. And once that is complete for one page, we're going to move on to the next page. Next slide.
Okay. In these next couple of slides, we are going to be going over the budget for this project. We have tried to make this budget in such a way that it'll be as affordable for the university as possible and really minimize the cost. And the way we've accomplished this is by deciding to use university resources and employees to carry out the project. We will, of course, need a project manager, which will come from an already hired employee of the university, an experienced software engineer who already, is a project manager. So this is not going to add any additional cost to our budget. Next, we're going to need 3 front-end web developers. These will also be student employees. They will be paid $15 an hour, work 20 hours a week over the course of 3 months, and will work a combined total of 720 hours. This will bring the cost of our front-end developers to $10,800. And then we will also need 1 student graphic designer. The graphic designer, we estimate, will work about 70 hours over the course of this project. We'll get paid $10 an hour, which will bring the total cost of the graphic designer to just $700. Next slide, please. The equipment required for this project will not add any cost because all the equipment and tools needed is already owned by the university. And so the total cost of this project is going to come to just $11,500. Now, just as a quick comparison, if we were to contract this project out to a company or a contractor to do it, we estimate the project to take about 910 hours to complete. The standard industry rate for custom work is around $100 an hour. That means it would cost the university approximately $91,000 if they were to contract a third-party company. And so just as illustrated by our graph on the right, you can see by keeping everything in-house within the university, we are saving a significant amount of money on this project. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Matthew. We will now be discussing the personnel and qualifications for the project team. We have 5 members, a project manager, 3 web developers, and the graphic designer. Next slide. For the project manager, we will need someone who can oversee the project as a whole, assigning specific tasks as needed to each of the developers and to the graphic designer, and specifically, someone who has oversight on the finished pages before they are deployed, to make sure that the graphics are in keeping with a pleasing layout according to the university's approval. Our current candidate for this position is Scott Bailey, who is a project manager currently employed with the BYU Idaho IT department. Next slide. For our 3 web developers, we actually have candidates chosen. They are Travis Baker, Matthew Hatch, and Joel Lassen. These candidates are computer science majors who are experienced with back-end, front-end web development, and as such are familiar with the thought processes and work processes involved with that type of assignment. Please proceed to the next slide. Now our graphic designer, our candidate for that position is Jordan Anderson. He is a graphic design major who has field experience and a solid portfolio to demonstrate that experience. And his responsibility would be to maintain the visual look of the page, to help it still maintain that BYU Idaho feel. Next slide. Now we will discuss the facilities and equipment needed for this project. A simple overview here, what is necessary to accomplish our goals. Next slide. So for facilities, we would need a meeting room for group planning meetings, similar to the one shown in the graphic. We would also require office space, sufficient for all 5 members of the team to operate and to perform their tasks and duties. We want them in close proximity so that consultation can be immediate and on-site, rather than having to contact by phone or by email. Next slide. Now the equipment. We would need computers to develop each web page and to test it. These computers would be acquired from computer labs or computer classrooms on campus. We would want 3 for the web developers. These would need to have access to the university's online web manager, Nginx, and preferably would have dual monitors to make it easier to multitask between how the page did operate and versus how the new page will operate. We would also want 1 computer for the graphic designer that has access to either the Adobe Creative Suite or the Adobe Creative Cloud. And we feel that an Apple machine would be optimal for this role, as they are generally designed with graphic design operations in mind. As for mobile devices, primarily used for testing each page before and as it's deployed, we would want to test the pages on an iPad and an Android tablet, as well as an iPhone and an Android smartphone, along with laptops and desktops. These mobile devices are already owned by the members of the team, and so would not need to be acquired from an external source. Next slide. So, in conclusion, we seek to increase the accessibility and productivity of the MyBYUI website by optimizing it to be more mobile accessible and to allow for faster access to the important tools and items that MyBYUI provides to its students. We also look at increasing the student use of the MyBYUI tools, which are in fact designed to assist students in their academic achievements, as well as make the student use of those tools more time efficient. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you for your time.
Well done.
Are there any questions?
So are you guys aware that they're like implementing bootstraps on campus?
Actually, I am aware of that. I'm a pseudo web developer on campus. I do some stuff for my department.
Oh, do you? Okay.
But they haven't touched the MyBYUI pages. Those are the ones that we plan on.
Those more specifically. Okay, I'm with you.
So when we talk about that there's a framework that's already there, we're talking about the Bootstrap framework.
Okay. So you'd be implementing bootstraps? Or?
We would. I mean, it's already installed on the server, but we just need to implement it in our project. That's it.
Okay.
Just the elements that are already there for us.
That makes sense. Yeah, I don't think I have any other questions. I agree 100%.
Anyone else?
Yeah, it's easy to see the value of it. I don't have any questions, but yeah, it'd be great to see this happen.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, I guess that concludes our portion of the proposal presentations, and that's it. So I'll stop the broadcast.